So in light of International Women's Day this week, the topic being all around women in the workplace and how we can empower women more in the workplace. It ties in really, really nicely with a piece of research that we've just done. I think what was interesting about the research is we didn't actually go in to find any sort of gender divide in the way confidence manifests in the workplace. But what we have found from the results is fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we basically asked a lot of business people all about whether or not they've struggled with imposter syndrome, how their own sort of confidence has manifested itself within the workplace, and any kind of financial sort of implications that they feel like that has had either on their own career or on the businesses that they're working for. And yeah, we found that, I mean, women are far more likely to struggle with confidence in the workplace. And within some of the kind of literature, you know, we see that time and time again, particularly when women are in more male-dominated roles, like engineering and that kind of thing. You do tend to find that women really struggle a lot more with their confidence, and that is a real predictor of success. So in those really male-dominated industries, nurturing a woman's self-esteem can be the thing that actually makes a huge difference in terms of, you know, her being able to thrive in the workplace.
And it's interesting, is because we talk about confidence a lot, but when we actually look at what confidence is, essentially it's just a feeling. Yeah, it's you either feel confident or you feel unconfident,
yeah.
And that feeling comes from a series of thoughts that we are having in that moment. So those thoughts might be around the self-doubt. You know, I can't do this. I don't belong here. They're more qualified than me. No one's taking me seriously. So it kind of makes sense that when you're in a sector that is traditionally very masculine, and the culture is very masculine, that those thoughts around self-doubt and not belonging and things like that are there, which then manifest in their confidence. So that seems quite logical as a place. What about in terms of how confidence actually manifests itself in the workplace? Because that was quite interesting as the results, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was great. So what we found from the research that we actually carried out was that women were far more likely to become like perfectionists about things. Perfectionism was massive for women. So whereas men might actually kind of become a bit overconfident in what they're doing.
Like overcompensate.
Overcompensate, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So actually when their confidence is threatened, they might go, no, I'm great at this and I can do that. And they'll kind of, you know, push on through, and they might become a little bit more confrontational. Actually, what the women were doing was shrinking. They were making themselves a lot smaller. So they reported being more introverted. They reported, you know, sort of that everything has to be perfect in order for them to feel like they belong within that workplace. And ultimately, that will result in people's performance being very different as well. And one of the things that we have seen time and time again is around the gender pay gap, which, you know, is really kind of important to talk about with International Women's Day. And, you know, the idea that women are just paid less than men, of course, it's not
that simple.
That straightforward. No. But one of the really big things is that confidence is a predictor of your salary. So the more confident you are, the more likely you are to ask for a pay rise, the more likely you are to go for higher paying jobs. And, you know, it's been estimated that in a lifetime it can cost you up to £1 million, you know, sort of over all of that time, if you are not actually pushing yourself out there enough. So people with lower confidence tend to be on much lower salaries, which is really interesting. So when you kind of bring this gender difference into it, women who feel like they need to be perfect, they're not going to be applying for those jobs. They're not going to be going to their bosses and saying, actually, I'd really like a pay rise. Actually, I really think I deserve this promotion, because all they're focusing on is, am I perfect enough to do that? And you can really then kind of see how that manifests itself into the types of roles that some women may well find themselves in.
Yeah, do you know what? It's so interesting, because I actually see this with so many of my clients, this ability to not only be perfect in work, but perfect as a human. Do you know what I mean? It's like I need to know everything. I need to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's and whatever. But I also need to make sure that I'm emotionally regulated all the time, and I need to make sure that I dress perfectly all the time, and I need to make sure that, you know, and it's just like the perfectionism sort of like seeps into every part of that person's existence. I think if that's the way that you are, it's really interesting when you say that, you know, as a pattern, when men feel less confident, they grow and women shrink. I really like that sort of visual element of it. But it's interesting, as you say, what that means for a career, because actually when somebody who feels threatened grows into a space and it's almost a land grab, isn't it? It's like, I need to have more so that I feel better about myself.
Yeah.
Whereas women is like, I need to be seen less until I'm ready, until I'm perfect to be able to get that, which kind of makes sense. And I don't know if you've read any of the Brené Brown books, but one of the things that she talks around the way that men and women experience shame is very different. So with men, it's, shame is really prevalent in moments where men feel weak. And they are somehow less than, whether that's physically less than, financially less than. What tends to happen is that induces shame, and it's what that shame response then is. And it's fascinating to think that, actually there's this land grab if you have these sort of more masculine tendencies, and there's this shrinkage if you have more feminine tendencies.
What's interesting as well, though, was that when it came to talking about quality of work due to lack of confidence, men were more likely to say that the quality of their work was less, whereas women, a tiny proportion of people said. So it's almost like that perfectionism is such a control thing, particularly in women, where they are going, if it's not perfect, they're going, no, my work definitely doesn't impact my work because everything has to be perfect. Whereas with the men, it was, yeah, no, it absolutely does. Like when I don't feel confident, the quality of my work does absolutely go down. And again, I do think that must be related into that kind of perfectionist qualities and that need to prove themselves in a way that maybe, a lot of men don't in that kind of gender difference.
And recently I've heard the language shift around the gender pay gap, and I've heard it called more the parent pay gap. And it's more when, and I'm not, disputing the fact that there is a gender pay gap because of all these, because it's a very complex topic. But the parent pay gap being actually whichever one of the parents has to take that career hiatus is the one that has some sort of financial impact. And culturally, that is almost always the women who step back from a career. But it's not just the maternity leave, and I think this is the thing. We were talking about this on a post on LinkedIn the other day, and saying that actually for a woman to step back from a career to have a baby, you have that the maternity leave, then you go back to work, and generally speaking, you go back to work part-time. Not everybody, but most women go back to work part-time, and you're still maintaining that primary carer status whilst working. And generally that lasts for probably 15 years. You know what I mean? So you're not necessarily leaning into your career in the same way that you were. You're not really pushing forward. And what that means is that you're overlooked for the promotions. You're not there in the same capacity to be able to learn and grow with a company. But then the knock-on for pensions, the knock-on for savings, all that financial security element is compromised because you had to take that sort of slash in your career, which isn't just, your 5-6 months of maternity leave. It is, a decade plus.
But there's also, which I don't think that we can overlook, that in terms of women in the workplace, we go through many changes as women. Like, we can take the example of having children. Obviously, not every woman, makes the decision to kind of have children. But actually, when you do those hormonal changes, taking that career break, what that means, the fact that there is that thing when you come back, you are a different person. I'm a different person after having my son.
Yeah.
And, I remember when I returned back into the workplace and there was a lot of, well, why can't you stay here an extra 2 hours? It's like, because I have to go and pick my child up. And not everybody, but a lot of people made me feel like I was less than because I was now a parent. And there was an awful lot of kind of quite masculine, oh, well, baby brain, or baby, you're now like that. And that
Can I just ask,
change.
How much more productive were you after you went back after maternity leave?
So much more. Multitasking at my ass off.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
But also, other stages through a woman's life that she has to deal with. So, a woman who, or teenager who starts her period, the difference that makes then in terms of schooling. You've got this massive other thing that's going on that you might not want to talk about. And, you know, this is going on every single month throughout your life. You might be struggling with, you know, PMT, headaches, a lot of different things that might be going on. And that will affect you
I used to
as
throw
a
up
person.
for 2 days a month when I got my period, from the age of about 13 through to about 25.
Yeah. And, you know, that affects you as a person. Then when that goes on and affects your career, it's going to affect your confidence.
Yeah.
And then also hitting the menopause.
Yeah.
Soon as you then go into kind of hitting the menopause, so many women report a massive lack of confidence around that time. One, because of the physical symptoms that they might be experiencing, you know, the actual kind of changes in their bodies, changes in their hormones, but also the societal stuff around, you know, what going through the menopause means to women, whether or not you are able to really talk about that, whether there is understanding in the work.
Well, and your diminishing worth as well.
Yeah.
You know, and I think women are really acutely
Which
aware.
isn't actually true, but it's this kind of perceived
It is
idea that, you know, you are less than somehow.
Yeah, it's totally nonsensical, and it's just another, it's another hysteria stick that women are beaten with. You know, it's just like, oh, it's your hormones, love. You know, you just think, oh my God, please stop with the hormones.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that you hit the menopause as well. It's like you don't hit the menopause. Actually, things start to happen in your early 40s that start to grind away at your confidence, whether it is the sleep, whether it is the worry that, or is this perimenopause, or is there something else going on? You know, and it's like our health consumes a huge part of our mental load when we're trying to do other stuff. And actually, when we talk about hitting the menopause, you know, you could be talking about 10, 15 years of quite severe hormonal changes which impact on so many different parts of, you know, of being a human being, you know, regardless of whether you're in the workplace or not.
But if you're an employer and you have got, I mean, let's hope that you have at least a 50%, you know, sort of male-female ratio, let's kind of go with that. But if you've got 50% of your workforce, or your potential workforce, who are struggling with their confidence on a daily, a monthly, you know, whatever, that is a huge part of your workforce that actually, with a little bit of investment, the amount that section of your workforce actually contribute to your company, the amount of their lives that they're giving to your company, you know, the skills that those women have, the things that they are bringing in, and they are giving their time, their energy, their focus to your company. And if you overlook the fact that actually there are these struggles going on within their life, what are you missing out on in terms of your productivity, in terms of how many of those staff are you then going to lose because you're not investing in what they need to make them feel truly valued within your company? Because we all know that if someone doesn't feel valued, they leave their company, they go. And then that means, as an employer, you have to deal with the retraining of somebody else. You've got somebody who might have 20 years worth of experience in your company. They know how everything works. You know, they are the person who's keeping everything ticking over. My God, if they leave because they don't feel valued, because their confidence has taken a hit with the menopause, or, you know, taken a hit after they've had a baby or whatever, and just that empathy, that understanding, and bringing confidence into it.
Here's an interesting question then, is whose responsibility is it, and I have my own opinions on this, to stimulate that conversation? Because if an employer, male or female, brings a woman into the office and says, let's talk about the menopause, let's talk about your ability to work post having a baby, like whatever that conversation is that seen as discriminatory, or is that seen as facilitatory? You know, it's like, where is that line? And also, where is the training for male managers and to some degree female managers who haven't been through the menopause, who don't understand what that is, or haven't had children and don't understand the pressures of that? Where's the training for them to be able to have those conversations and to create an environment that is really conducive to, you know, it's inclusivity on all levels, isn't it? It's like, how do we create an environment that's nurturing?
Yeah. I think it is about facilitation. I think that is the key, and about having those communication channels. And it's like, if your employees feel like they can come and they can actually talk to you about this stuff, and it is going to be a safe environment, they will talk to you about it. They will talk about it.
It's very personal, isn't it? It's very personal, very private. Everyone's experiences are very different. And some people are going to want to talk about it, and some people aren't going to want to talk about it.
But I think, if you're pulling someone, there's a very different conversation to be had. If you're pulling someone and go, yeah, but what are you realistically going to be able to do after you have a baby? That's a very negative conversation to have. Whereas talking to someone and going, I'd really like to have a conversation about how we can make this work for you, because you're a valued member of staff. After you have this baby, some of your needs might change. So how can we make that work for you? We want to maintain that open channel of communication. And
tonally, it's very different, isn't
it? Essentially, it's the same subject, but one of them is basically saying, meh, you're not going to be great at doing this, so you're going to be less than, and the other one is going, we really value you, and we know that you're going to be bringing extra into this role. We just want to make sure that is going to work for you.
And understanding that not having these conversations and not creating that environment for people is going to make people's confidence shake. And that's what I love about this research is being able to really inform leaders of what a lack of confidence might look like in your employees. If people are shrinking away, if they are taking a long time to finish stuff, if they are constantly wanting that extra time to perfect stuff, or conversely, is there an over-exaggeration of abilities? Is there this overconfidence? Is there this confrontation and conflict in a team? Because there is going to be dysregulation on both sides, male or female, if confidence isn't right. And I mean, God, exactly as you said, can you imagine if you had a really well emotionally regulated team where this lot that are prone to do this are here, and this lot that are prone to do this are here, and everybody is just operating at their absolute full potential, no bullshit, no hiding away. What would that mean for your business financially? What would it mean in terms of growth? What would it mean in terms of being an amazing place to work? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Investing in your staff's emotional well-being, in their mindset for whatever life stage they might be at, you can't overstate the importance of it. And I think on International Women's Day, particularly when we're looking at women and understanding that there may well be differences because of lived experience, there may well be differences because of physical changes that people are going through, but also the society that we live in and the different ways that we present ourselves. So as women, we are taught that we should behave in a certain way, men are taught they should behave in a certain way, and how that then manifests in a workplace. And in either one of those behaviours, whether it is growing or shrinking, that can be detrimental to your own sanity, but also to the business that you're in. And understanding that and really investing in people and making sure that they are valued, that they understand their own, their own powers that they have, can be so powerful.
And maybe, it's a simple starting point as having a conversation. It is, whether it is being able to provide space and time for a group of women in the organisation to come together and have this conversation. How do they want to see the organisation supporting them? And then, have that listening ear and being able to be open and flexible to how can we design our business to be one that is very nurturing to this incredibly important segment of our workforce.
Absolutely. And we all want to see women thrive in the workplace this International Women's Day and beyond.
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.